Get ready for another video in Alex's garage. Alright, so let's get started working on this Pertronix flamethrower. Now, if you recall from our previous video, one of the reasons why we went with the Pertronix was because the vacuum advance, the older one, was shot. The rubber in there was shot, and so it didn't hold a vacuum, and it's kind of critical. The reason why we didn't just replace the vacuum advance is it was more expensive to replace the vacuum advance than to purchase the flamethrower. Now, the flamethrower also has some additional advantages aside from being new and presumably more dependable. The Pertronix uses a solid state ignition, which means it does not use points. It has a magnetic pickup that this little magnet inside here will tell it when to fire as it crosses in front of the pickup right here. So this little device here will read a little magnet when it comes across and tell it when to fire. So it still has a rotor just like any other distributor. It's a little smaller than most, but does the same thing that any other rotor does. It's connected with a little cog back there so it stays oriented correctly. And that is a one-to-one relationship. If you look at the way that the gears connect right here, this is a one-to-one relationship. Now, I say that. You hear that right there? That is the the mechanical or the centrifugal advance. There's two things on a distributor that will advance the points. One of them is vacuum, and the other one is the speed overall. So when it gets spinning faster, then it'll change as well. So let's have a look at those. I'm going to go ahead and take this apart, and we'll just take a peek and see what we got going on in here and how that works. All right, so I got the little pickup taken off. You can see there's a little device right here. The wires just push out from this little hole right here. See, oops, got a little hole right there. And so that's one piece. I imagine that's replaceable. It seems pretty easy to service. I removed both of the little screws down here, hoping to get this shield out, but it won't get past this magnetic pickup because I think this thing is pressed in place, and I don't want to push the issue too much with this. Just wanted to see if it was easy to get to, but it's not really that easy to get to. But you can see better the mechanism down in there with the little weights and springs. And you can also see I've taken the vacuum advance off. The vacuum advance is connected with these little holes onto that little post right there. See that little post? And it's kind of a good thing that I took this apart because in my case it wasn't connected. Manufacturing defect or something, I don't know. Anyway, we'll put that together right when we get it back together. It just came out without any being jacked around. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put my little endoscope in here so we can see inside this little crack here, so you can get a better look at what the mechanism does and see how that works when it spins. But the idea here is when it's spinning, it will advance, or it'll advance the spark just a little bit. Just so that it will stay on top of it. So when the engine is firing, it takes a little bit of time for the spark to ignite the fuel and then for the fuel to detonate. And so when the engine's running at a higher speed, you need that to start a little sooner, and that's why you would advance the timing when you get up to speed. Likewise, when you're accelerating and the vacuum is advancing the spark, it's the same kind of effect. You want to just give that one little advance to get the engine to hit at exactly the right spot. So that's kind of how that works. Let me run the endoscope down through here so you can get a real quick look at what that looks like. All right, so that's that. Let's go ahead and put this thing back together. All right. So one thing to notice is each of the screws, they have a black split washer on the top, and then just kind of a standard flat washer that goes underneath them. All of them all have the same configuration, so you don't have to worry about that being, you know, one thing or the other. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and connect this thing. Back into the right hole. All right, that feels like it's engaged. Whoops. After telling you that it has a lock washer and a washer, I didn't put the washer on. Right, we'll get that lined up. Nice and snug. Nice and snug. Check, make sure that we're still connected. Yep. I can feel that just fine. That's better. When I took this apart the first time, this was free flowing and it didn't seem like it was connected to the vacuum. So it's a good thing I took it apart because now I think it's connected right. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run this wire back in there. This wire has a grommet with a little groove in it, so you just have to get it past that groove and you'll be golden. All right. And I'm going to convince it left and right. I'm not pulling the wires, I'm pulling the rubber. we go, we're getting close. And click. That's how that goes. All right. Now this little guy goes right back in here. You feel like there's a little groove. You can see these little grooves here. That little groove's going to click into its little spot. The little stings, little connect, they just kind of do what they're going to do. You can feel when it's in there. There we go. All right, so one screw goes through this wire right here and connects here. Do that first. Just kind of lightly put that in there. Now we don't want it to interfere with anything, so I'm just going to keep this wire just kind of loose a little bit. And this routes over the top of the red and white wire and matches up down here with this hole. Right down there. All right, see how I got that? Now, my screwdriver is magnetic, so it makes it a lot easier to grab the screws. You don't have to have two fingers on it when you're putting your screws in the holes. But it's strong enough magnet that it actually holds the washers. I don't know if you can see that. It actually holds the washers in place too. So you can hold this and get a nice gap of where that's going and just drop that baby in there. And just like playing Operation when you were a kid. Take out the wrenched ankle. Alright, this one here we can put in nice and tight. And now that we have all the wires all routed correctly, we can tighten this one up. Alright, the last little screw goes right down in there. Okay, let's get those snugged up nice and tight. All right, and there you have it. GFI, or a Pertronix Flamethrower all reinstalled. So the next thing on the instructions for this thing are to test the coil for resistance. So let's take care of that. All right, so on the instructions here, it says that you need to check right in here for 8-cylinder engines, a minimum of 1.5 ohms of primary resistance. 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines require a minimum of 3 ohms of primary resistance on the ignition circuit. So how do you get a measurement of the ohms on your ignition circuit? So here's the coil. Now, I'm going to give you a hint right here. I've already tested this, and there's some words on this coil that should be a dead giveaway of whether this is going to work or not. External resistor required. It does say 12 volts, so that's a strike and it's in the good favor, but that requirement for the external resistor is going to be a problem. I've tested this. So the way you run your multimeter is you set it to ohms, and we're going to put it here to 200. That's the smaller setting, and we just want to get 3 or better, right? 3 or better, minimum of 3. All you need to do, it doesn't matter which way you put it, left or right, because you're just measuring the resistance. And whoops, Actually, I wonder if there's a... That'll make it a lot easier to read. So, that's no resistance. Basically zero. But if you put it in here, you don't want to touch it, but you just push these down nice and hard and let it settle, and you can see this only has 2 ohms of resistance. So this brand new coil that I purchased is not going to fly with the Flamethrower. And the reason why that's important, and the reason why they have it in the instructions, is it's not just opening and closing points. It actually needs a magnetic circuit in order for this to fire. So if the resistance in here is not right, then you won't get this to work right. So we're going to buy a new coil. So I won't be doing the entire installation today. We'll have another follow-on video. Oh, surprise, surprise, part 3. But that shouldn't keep us away from going ahead and installing this thing. So next thing we need to do is we need to orient it. You can see, just like on the MG, there's a high side and a low side, right? So this little gear is going to fit up, is going to match up just fine with how we have it set. I'm going to go ahead and set the distributor and the engine to top dead center on the first cylinder, and we're going to start this in a worst case scenario. You've taken your engine apart and you're putting a new distributor on, and you need to orient your vehicle to find pin cylinder 1 on the distributor. So let's go ahead and move on over to the engine and show you how to orient the distributor. All right, so first thing you need to do is we need to get the engine to top dead center. You can see here I've got my points lined up with my timing marks. Here's a little mark on the flywheel here. I went ahead and painted that white so it's easy to find. But how do I know that that's top dead center in the ignition stroke, right? So let me show you real quick how you can find that. I've already loosened these to make it easier to pull off. All you need to do is check the state of your valves. You can really easily pull this baby off. And if you are in fact at top dead center on cylinder 1 in the ignition stroke, both of the valves will be loose. That means that the valves are both closed, and the cylinder is at top dead center. You can actually put something in there to see. There's the cylinder right there. This cylinder is way much further down, right? This one's up here, it's at the top. So you can confirm that. Anyway, the point is that when both of these are loose, that means that these springs are not compressed, and that the valves are in fact closed. That should put it in ignition stroke of top dead center on cylinder number 1. All right, so once we're there, the next thing we need to do is to orient the distributor drive gear. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that and take a better look. All right, so from this view right here, you can see that we've got the plate that holds the distributor gear in place. We've got that taken out. And I'm going to go ahead and pull the distributor drive gear out. This, okay. So this drive gear doesn't come with a screw, right? This little 5/16 screw is actually this was it just, you can use any 5/16, but it has to be a fine thread screw. But it's really easy. You just put this baby in there, little hand tight, and it makes it a little easy to deal with. Now when you're looking at this distributor gear, you can see that the little cut is off center. There's a big spot and there's a smaller spot. This one's smaller, right? The smaller one goes on the bottom when you're oriented. So let's go ahead and slide this baby in. All right, I've already got assembly grease on here. Now one of the things you'll notice is that with this gear, it's going to turn a little bit, right? So if you set it in there so that the fat one is on the top and the skinny one is on the bottom, you can turn it just a little bit and it will turn just, I don't know if you can see, it turns like maybe 5 degrees in the course of setting that into place. Once you get it in there, then you can just take this out. This temporary little screw, that's not part of the deal. All right, so now you know you got it's all lined up in there. Let's go ahead and put this retaining bracket in there. There's only one screw that holds this in place. It has a couple of other screw holes, but only one screw holds this in place, and it's this little, I don't know if you can see, where am I at? Little tiny beveled Phillips screwdriver screw, and that goes right in there. Right, and then all that's got to do is hold this thing in place, and it doesn't have to do anything special. You don't have to have a lot of torque on it. It just needs to be able to go away. All right, that's in place. And you can see it's below the surface. So that's not going to get in the way of anything. All right, next thing we need to do is take a look at this bracket. All right, so this is the retaining bracket that holds this whole shebang into place. You need to loosen this with this adjusting screw at the top in order to allow you to time your car. And you do that by turning the distributor one way or the other, but once you get it where you want it, then you tighten it up. The problem with this design is that if you tighten these two bolts down here, then when you tighten this, then all you're going to be doing is bending it from the top up, and it won't really get a good bite. So what you need to do is tighten these last. I'm going to get them in place so that it's centered and it's in place right. And then when you want to tighten it, you want to tighten this top one, and then once you get it, the distributor adjusted where you want it, then you tighten these babies up. And what that does is it allows these to slide just a little bit, and that will engage the entire circle when it clamps down. All right, let's go ahead and put this baby in place. Oops. Here we go. Right, that's all lined up. So like I was saying, when you clamp this down, this whole outside edge will grab the distributor. And the place where it's going to grab it, where am I at, is this ring right here. That's where it will grab it. Right inside there. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of assembly oil on this little O-ring right here just to make sure that it's not dry going in, and then we'll slide this baby in place. Okay, so with the fat side down, again, you want the skinny one on the bottom and the fat one on the top. It's not going to line up exactly horizontal because it did turn, if you recall. I'm going to slide this baby in place. And I'm going to turn it. You know what, let's put the rotor on, just to make it a little bit easier to get those gears to line up. Okay. Actually, I think I've got that a little bit too tight right there. I could have backed that off. Okay, so I backed off the screw a little bit here, and I've loosened up these a little bit so that the whole mechanism can jiggle a little, and we can get this thing to go past that plate. Just like that. There you can see it's installed. Now, one of the things that you'll notice here, I got the cylinder 1 at top dead center, and the rotor here is at cylinder 1. So it should be firing in this direction, and so that shows that that's a good orientation. If this rotor was pointing any other direction, then this cap would have been in some kind of a weird orientation. But when you put the cap on, you can probably go ahead and do that right now. I got this right. Groove goes down there. Okay. All right. So the cap for pin 1 is right here. You see that's going to be pin 1. Let me pull this off so you can see. The rotor's at pin 1. When you orient the cap, there's pin 1 right there. Okay? Now when we're going to time this, we're going to time it by spinning this a little bit, right? So we're just going to set this right here for now, and then we'll get it set. When we get into timing, that'll be a whole nother video. So let's go ahead and just kind of tighten this up so it's easy for us to clean up and finish up. All right, so let's run through a quick summary of what we accomplished today. First of all, we took apart and reassembled a Pertronix flamethrower. When it was delivered, it felt as though the vacuum advance was not connected properly, but it's working now. And it looks like when we got it back together, it went back together just fine. All right, then we went through how to install the distributor drive gear, going over how to confirm that cylinder 1 is in fact at top dead center. Oops. Here you can see timing marks, and that both the valves are closed. Went through how to install the distributor, getting it in place. Confirmed that the rotor was pointing pin 1 in the right direction, which means that we got it all installed correctly. One of the things that we ran into it was a problem is that our coil that we purchased does not have the proper resistance to support the Pertronix. So we're going to have to buy a new coil and get that thing straightened out before we can get things rolling. That's it for today's video, installation of the Pertronix Flamethrower. If you have any questions or any comments about anything that we did today, if you've had any experience with the Pertronix Flamethrower that you'd like to share with everyone, please share with the whole class. Next week we'll be installing the carburetor. We cleaned it all up and rebuilt it, and now it's time to get that thing installed. We're getting really close. I think sometime during the month of May we'll have this thing running. God willing and the creek don't rise. But I think that we'll be good to go. So make sure you check back periodically and make sure that you don't miss anything as we get this thing rolling. There you go. Have a good day.